Go ahead and start the podcast. All right, perfect. You don't have a mic, although you hear me. Okay, no problem. As long as you can hear me, that's fine. Feel free to throw something in the chat box if you have some questions. So I just started our broadcast. What we're going to try to talk about today is just discussions. But again, if you guys have any questions or something you want to entertain thoughts about, please feel free to interject, and we can talk about that. So with that being said, let me. So I got off to a crazy start with the whole mic thing acting funny in the other room. So let me log into CourseDen. And I'm going to go into just a sandbox course just to kind of play with it from there. Before I start, do you have either one of you have questions that you want me to address? Is there kind of what's the main reason that you showed up today? Is there something I can make sure we talk about?
David, one of the things that I'm interested in learning is, for one, I don't do a lot of discussion boards because I find it difficult to recreate in a virtual environment the discussions that happen in class because of the nature of the synchronous versus asynchronous interaction. And so I'm looking for any kind of tips or pointers that you can give, not just in how to set them up, but how to design them to be effective.
Okay, that works. I will go down that road and see if we can answer that. Hopefully we can. Any other questions before I start? So initially, I'll kind of just walk through a little bit of the basic stuff, which you probably already have under your belt. But I'll walk through just a little bit of that, and then we'll create a couple of discussions, try to talk about some of the different options, and perhaps how some other people might use them. I don't know if I have any good examples I can pull up that I've been given permission to use here, but I can certainly kind of talk about how some other people probably the discussion is most used. I cannot talk today. Good thing the week's half over, right? All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go in the course builder and build a discussion from there. Then it'll come back to the discussion tool and take a look at it. So I'm going to go into course builder. So if you've done the discussions before, you probably already understand at least this process. But if you haven't, then we'll just make a quick walkthrough. So I've already built a bunch of modules in my sandbox, kind of based on weeks, and then one I threw at the end just to show somebody something. Actually, it's not one I'll probably even keep. Actually, I'll just go get rid of that right now. I don't need it in there. So I have some modules. I'm going to add one more module, so I have an empty one that I'll add my discussion to, which say from the week 9 perhaps. So I'll go ahead and throw that in there. Excuse me. All right, we have week 9. I'm going to go ahead and grab a discussion now. So under add content, this lovely little icon over here with the 2 bubbles, this is our discussion content. I'm going to pull that over and drop it off on week 9. And I do see the question in chat, and we'll try to entertain that a little bit toward the end. That's kind of outside of the realm of this particular talk, but we can certainly talk about it if you'd like. The question was about the gradebook and math equations, which aren't used very heavily right now, but there are people starting to try to test that water, if you will. So my discussion, I'm just going to call this week 9 discussion. I can give it a description if I'd like to. Notice the description, there's a difference between description and notes. You see where it says notes, that's only for you. The students do not see that. But description is for the students. So really this is almost more like instruction. So this is where I can add something to them so they understand what they're doing in this discussion. Right now this particular discussion is not graded. If I want to add it to the gradebook, I need to create a new grade item. So I'm going to say new grade item. And just to make this short, I'll just call it W9 discussion. And in my gradebook, I've built categories already. So I'll add it to my discussions category. And again, I don't get really deep into that right now, but so it'll automatically kind of add it to that particular group that's being, I'm using weighted grading. So again, I have a description. Here it's not really necessary, in my opinion, to add a description in the grade book. So it's a little different. And I'm going to go with 10 points. That's fine. These two options underneath, one is can exceed, one is bonus. So if you click on this little question mark, it actually gives you some information. I want to point this out because you'll find these throughout the course den. They're kind of everywhere. So if you get somewhere and you're wondering what it means, if you click on that, it'll give you some understanding of what they're talking about. So sometimes it might be kind of obvious, sometimes it's not, but basically this option is just so it can exceed the maximum points specified. So if you want it to be able to go higher than what you're telling it, then that's great. I don't really know why you'd use that, but especially in a discussion. Or the bonus option. So bonus means this entire graded item will be bonus. So it will not count against a grade, only for it. So if you add a bonus item, that's what that's doing. I don't really get into the grade scheme, but normally you're going to probably stick with percentage. The other one that people often use, or sometimes use, not often probably, is the letter grade scheme, which you can build. Thank you. And I'll say create. So that creates my grade item. And now I want to make my score out of match whatever I just did in my grade item. So I know I did 10, so I'll do 10 for my score out of. I don't know why, but Desirelin doesn't really tie those together. You have to do it yourself. So although I could put a score out of 10 here, and I wouldn't even without putting a grade item, so it wouldn't be tied to the grade book if I do that, but it'll look like it's gradable. So, just kind of be aware of, keep an eye out for that. Underneath that, my options. So there's an option to allow an anonymous post, which basically means, well, just what it says. It's anonymous so that you don't know who's posting. If you click this, I believe in the past this was actually only anonymous to students, but I believe that's been changed now. I believe they actually are anonymous. And I don't know how many reasons there are to do that, but there's probably a few. Maybe you're having a conversation about something that's kind of sensitive in nature. You want people to be able to actually kind of talk freely. You can do that. If you do that, I would probably recommend putting some kind of moderator on it, so that if things are completely out of whack, it's not. You can kind of keep an eye on that. Sometimes people can talk freely, they do, and that's not always a good thing. And this other option down here, a user must start a thread before they can reply to other threads. This is actually pretty cool. So it's basically means you can't say ditto. I can't go in and read somebody else's threads and go, yep, I agree with Bob, which happens sometimes. I've heard both sides of the kind of the coin on that one. Some people don't like it because, well, that's where they get their ideas from. But I guess that's kind of why people usually would that's the reason you may click that, because you want people to have their own ideas. So under restrictions, I would normally leave this topic as always visible. It just makes sense to me. I don't see a reason in kind of hiding that. And you do have the option, of course, for modifying that and making it only visible for a certain date range. So I'll say create. So there's my discussion. So it's basically created here. So what oftentimes it's not really obvious, but in certain tools inside of CourseDen, the discussions, the assessments for sure, some things you can do a lot more. There's more settings with that if I go to the tool itself instead of from the course builder. So when I'm creating a quiz or creating something inside the course builder, which is a good idea, it actually adds it where it needs to be. I then need to bounce up. I'll go to my main course homepage by clicking on my link here. Now if I go to discussions, which I've hidden my discussions here a little bit. So under discussions, scroll down and find my new discussion I just made. And I got too many in here, I think, because I've been playing. So I'm going to click the drop down and edit the topic. So I have a few more pieces here that I didn't have on the other one. The assessments, you have a lot more when you create an assessment. You kind of have to go here to really add questions and do anything. But with discussions, not quite so much. So some of this is already walked through, but the restrictions, I can do some other things with restrictions as far as, I don't know if either one of you use selective release. That's release conditions. I think in the old system they called it selective release. If you want, you can actually only allow them to kind of use or see this discussion if they meet certain criteria. So you can basically say, and I don't know for sure why you do that in discussion area, but I can see doing that in different quizzes or different modules. So basically, if you finish the last week's discussion, you can move on to this week's discussion. So you can do things like that using these release conditions. Um, you can also restrict it to groups. I wouldn't probably do that from here, although it's possible. If I was going to do this, I would actually create this from the group manager under edit course. You can create a group and actually create a discussion right from there. So if you're doing group discussions, that's really the best way to do it. Doing it from here kind of can cause some headache, mostly for you actually, not probably much for your students, but definitely for you. And then the assessment piece, again, we've already walked through this. This part I don't believe was in the other piece, though. I could say I can allow assessment of individual posts, so you can do some interesting stuff with this. I haven't played real heavily with this, but you can do some different grading than you could in some past systems that we've used here at the University of West Georgia. And objectives. So this is another one I get asked about quite a bit, but frankly we don't. Actually, sorry, it came on here. I told it to allow assessment based on something, but I didn't select anything. That's why I didn't let me go through there. So let me change that. So objectives. Although we don't use this tool necessarily, we normally would push this objective, say, in your overview page for your module. The only reason we don't really use this tool heavily is because it's to be very effective, it actually requires a piece of desire to learn that the state hasn't purchased. So the analytic tool that we haven't really bought into, and it may give us kind of more reason to use that. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but it seems like it's not quite as beneficial as it would be if we bought into that. So I would just add my objectives to my module overview pages instead of adding them here. I think they're a little easier for the students to kind of follow that way. So that's my discussion. Let's go ahead and just take a look at that real quick. So I'm going to click on Course Home. So now over under Content Browser, I'm going to scroll down to week 9. Oops. And click on my discussion. So as an instructor, you can certainly come in and add threads, add comments, create your own thread and comment on your students' threads. And that's the other thing I want to mention is sometimes we change our user here to student, or if you actually have a student user that you log in as, that happens sometimes, and then people get a little confused because the discussion comes across a little different, and the students sometimes are a little lost on who's actually who they're being addressed by, I guess. So I'm going to say start a new thread. And you may, even as an instructor, you might just come in and start the first thread, kind of an example, or to give a little bit of a just insight on what you're looking for this particular discussion. And you can add kind of whatever you want. Something to point out is anytime you see this little HTML editor, you can actually do quite a bit with this. So pretty much anywhere throughout the system, you can add things like videos, images, links, pretty much anything. So I've seen some kind of interesting discussions where people have actually posted a video in here and then have the discussion based on that video. So that's an option. You can also add that up here under the description. So in the description of the discussion, you can actually come up here and click on that. I'm going to open this up so I can see more of my tools. If I want to insert a video, I can actually just click right here on this insert stuff and embed a video. So it works best probably with a YouTube video, but there's some other options as well. I think that's kind of a cool tool. So far, do we have any questions? I know it's kind of odd when both of you are real quiet like this. Any thoughts or questions before I move forward?
No, this is all good. Like I said, I haven't set up a lot of discussions, so I've walked through it before, but I don't use it enough to really be that familiar with it. A lot of my classes here at West Georgia are kind of hybrid, so we do the discussion part in class, but I do teach in the Web MBAs, and that's completely online. And I just haven't really set up a lot of discussions because of the whole asynchronous issue, and the whole. I agree with what Bob said. And I've done the QM training, and in the QM training they require you to read and comment on 2 or 3 people, but I still don't find that to be a real fulfilling conversation, because what I ended up doing because of time and what I know other people were doing is I was just finding my 2 or 3 people, reading what they had to say, and making my comments.
Yep.
It's just I don't have time to engage with every comment that everybody makes in the class. So I guess that's a challenge for me. And because I haven't felt like I found a good answer, my solution has been to not require discussions.
I completely understand that. I think there's a couple options, and I'll talk about some options outside of this tool that may actually be more fitting to what you're trying to do. So it is tricky, like you said, you're trying to find this happy medium in getting conversation and not creating basically dig a hole and bury it work that people are just doing and they're not getting anything out of it. So if that's kind of what you're saying, I believe it is.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. So I had some other things. I'm pushing a few things because I'm crazy, I guess, to some professors, just kind of out of the box options for a different way to collaborate with students and have students collaborate with each other instead of necessarily writing the discussion board. But I think there's some neat options you could do with something inside a discussion board. So I'm going to shoot clean out of the box right now because I think that's what you're looking to do, frankly. So your basic discussion does exactly what you just said. Your basic discussion, the asynchronous, allows them to kind of post right now. Someone else comes back, and oftentimes that's right. People do sit, like they require you post one initial post and you respond to one or two of your peers. Is that the ideal way to do it? Possibly not. Um, it's often the most common way to do it, probably. It's the most common way it's being done now. I don't think it's optimal. So it depends what you're trying to get out of the discussion. So you can also group up your different peers so that you don't have, sometimes you get into a discussion group and if you're asked to do that with your entire class and there's 35 people in it, or whatever in your class, there's no way you're reading everybody's post and then just discussing too. You're going to find a couple look like they're more interesting based on their subject line or how cute the girl is in her little icon, and you'll respond to that. So I think there's a lot to be said.
Or the other way you find your discussion point, David, is to look for the shortest first comment so you don't have as much to read.
Yeah, it's true. Very true. So another possibility to kind of get more interaction is to make smaller groups and build your discussions inside of those small groups. So instead of having some people just get left out in the cold kind of because one, they didn't look interesting from the get-go, so no one really responded, or for whatever reason they just didn't get responded to. If you create small groups and then create discussions inside of that group, I believe that'll actually fix or help some of the issues that you're kind of laying out. At least in my opinion, it seems to be a much better method if you say, I'm going to have groups of 5 or groups of 4 or whatever, and just have them interact a little bit more. You'll get more interaction in a smaller group because it's more obvious whether they're interacting or not, and they only have a few people to read, so they're not so overwhelmed with everything. So that's an option. The other piece that I'm kind of working with some other professors on right now is using stuff like Google Docs to do collaborative work. So I guess it depends on kind of the reason behind your discussion. Right? So what are you getting out of the discussion? What's the point? Why are you adding it to the class? Are you adding it, excuse me, are you adding it because you want them to collaborate on some topic? Or are you adding it just to kind of, because that's what we're told we need to do? Like really what's behind, what's the push for the discussion? What's the objective that you're going to get out of it by them having that discussion in the first place?
Well, from the Web MBA, it's a lot of the fact that I get to read their essays and I get to have exposure to all of their personal experiences, but they don't get to share that with each other. So
Yeah.
sometimes I'll post a discussion and just say, okay, I've read all of your essays. I would like for you to pick one of your favorite things that you've learned or considered or shared with me in an essay over the past 3 weeks, and just post it here and share it with your classmates. Sometimes people do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it sparks a conversation between 3 of them, and they'll go on off into their own little tangent, which is okay. I don't mind that at all. It's kind of a free-flowing thing. But it's mainly what I'd like to do is find an easy way to facilitate the learning and bouncing of ideas off of each other, um, from one student to the next without sacrificing the convenience of asynchronous communication.
Right. Right. That makes sense. I personally like to push the idea of Google Docs. Frankly, I think there's a lot can be done there. And now that the University of West Georgia has bought into Google Apps every student has a Google account. So you can actually integrate that kind of into CourseDen via links, via just the way you share and embed different things inside of CourseDen. I'm actually working right now with the Board of Regents to try to actually integrate the Google Apps into our CourseDen system so we can do more and more with it, and it'll tie much better to Desire to Learn. So when it comes to like collaboration and try to bounce thoughts, I think you can do a lot with that. The, the one that I'm working on now with someone, it's a smaller class, granted, so she only has 7 or 8 people in this class, but she wants them to, as a term project, to create a term project. So they do some of their writing, and she wants their peers to comment on that writing, almost like a writing group. So you're going to come in, they'll read some of their peers' papers that they're starting, and they'll make comments to those papers. So it's a little more interactive, in my opinion, than a. Let me actually just pull it up. I'll show you. I know it's a little bit out of the discussion, but it's another way to discuss. So let's just see if we can make it work.
Well, and while you're pulling that up, I'm actually using Google Docs in my own campus class. But what I have them to do is, well, it's a hybrid course. We've flipped the classroom, so we're on campus one day a week.
Yeah.
When we're in there, the students, I have them in the row that they're sitting on in the computer lab. The person closest to the wall starts a Google Doc and gets everybody else's username, and they collaborate and create a answer to an assignment right there in class in a Google Doc.
Cool.
It's worked out really good so far, but I've never thought about embedding it as a discussion.
Let me show you how I would think that may be a good option. I'm shooting off the top of my head right now, and I've played with this quite a bit. I've talked to other people about it. I like the idea. So if you have some thoughts with this, please interject. But you can also share not only individual files, you can share folders. So what if I come over here and I click on folder? I'm going to say create a folder, and I'm going to build a folder just for my class. So I'll build it for my, I'll just call it my sandbox so I know what this is later. So I'll create a folder for my class, and I'll say create. So now I have my folder created here. So I've just lost it all of a sudden. Here it is. So I'm going to go, I can click on my folder, come inside of my folder. I can now share the entire folder with my class. So if I share the whole folder, I can embed the folder in my class and either allow the students to upload things or create things themselves inside the folder, or I can actually create some files ahead of time. So if I don't have a huge class, I can just pre-create 10 files, put their names on them, and actually get the settings done initially, so I don't have to worry about their kind of intelligence as far as the Google system is concerned. Up on the top, I'm going to say share folder. So my options to share are what I like. So first, if I really want to, I can open up BandWeb, get my students' email addresses, and just paste them in here. And I can give them all edit rights to the folder so that they can come in and upload or modify the document. So by just clicking on, put their names in, click Edit or View. I can also, this is my personal favorite, because inside of CourseDen, it's kind of a controlled audience anyway. I can actually just change this top thing right here. I can say change. Then I can allow anyone with a link, or I can say only people at UWG with a link. The benefit of this is when they log in to a file in here, if I share it using this method, at least the files themselves, I know who's edited and who's modified, who's commented, because they have to log in with their Weska email to actually access it. So it allows me to look back and I know who's doing what. If I do it this way, they don't have to log in at all. It does not require login. So I'd probably do it this way. So I would say people at UWG with the link can edit this, or can view. So for this one, for my folder, maybe I can just say just edit if I want to create their files for them, or I can say can edit. So then I can say save. Now I have this link. So I can take this link, go back to my class, and I can either just add it here. I can actually just put it inside of here, or I can just add it right before so if I go back to Course Builder. So right before, let me open my module here. I could just come over here, grab my link tool, and add it right before my discussion. And it's just a URL, paste it in, insert, and then right up here, I can call it kind of whatever you want, but for this, let's call it Google Docs folder. Say save. So now if I look at that from kind of a student perspective, at least from this main window, click on week 9, go to my Google Docs folder. Actually, I do need to tell it to open in a new window first. That's something you gotta make sure you click open in new window. Let me back up. So then it pops up in a brand new window. So as I start creating, oops, I think I grabbed the wrong folder actually. Oh, I have 2 folders shared in here, that's why. Let me go to week 8. In my last class, I actually did a different folder. Week 9. So my Google Docs folder opens up. It's empty right now because I haven't added anything in here. And I already have it in my drive. However, when a student clicks on it, see if I take this same link and I'll paste it in the chat box. If you guys want to actually open it, go ahead and just click on it, because you should be able to. At this point, I've given you, I believe, edit rights to this folder. So if you wanted to, you could actually add that to your drive and create a file inside of this folder. So what I did with the other professor is, again, she only had a few students, so it wasn't as bad to do, is we actually come into this drive and we created some empty, oops, let me go back to my drive over here. So I'm going to cancel that. So it's shared right now, but she had come in and actually created a couple of empty kind of starter documents that had just a brief piece in there. She created one on her desktop and just drug it over there 6 times and then renamed it for each student. So there wasn't, she kind of created a template and just reused that template. But I could just say create document. And I'll create and share because it's going inside of this folder. And I'll create one for you, Brad, just because you're that kind of guy. So I'll create a document. Again, it could be your name or it could be, assignment, and then put your name in if you want to. And then up here under share, right now, this entire piece is shared so that everybody, all the files in here are editable by everybody. The reason she did it differently is because she wanted, say, Brad's file to be editable by Brad, but everybody else could comment on the file. So for this one, she actually utilized the email addresses. But I could come down and say, well, in here, I'd like, let's see if I can get this to come across. Oops. I'll give you different right. So I'll come down here and give comment rights here. And I won't send an email, but from that link I just sent you, if you click on it, it'll let comment. So again, that's if I'm not allowing everybody to edit. This already has, each of you have edit rights because I've already given edit rights to this entire folder and everything inside of it. But if I change that, sorry, I'm kind of going off a little crazy here, but I'll change this a little bit, Brad. So you have, again, we'll just use the individual emails, but I'll make this so that it's only for my class, and I was specific because I want some people to comment and some people to edit. So if I create it this way, then we have a comment and an edit. So once you're in there, again, you can type and do whatever you'd like. Now if Dr. De Silva wants to type in here, you can either right-click and say comment, and then it'll pop up a little comment box. Yep, lost typing rights, that's right. But then you can come in here and shoot some typing rights. I can't talk. Sorry. Hey, this is great. Okay, so that's one option. You can also, if you have editing rights, you can come up to the top where it says editing, and you can say, well, I want suggesting rights. I want to be able to just suggest to this document. So maybe this is, we both have edit rights, but I don't really want to overwrite Brad's document. I just want to suggest stuff, and then if he likes it, he can accept it. So I'm going to change my mode to suggesting. Now I come over here, and I can type in some information. So notice as soon as I start to space, it's actually leaving a difference. It's kind of like a comment, but it's not the same, and I'll show you the difference. So if I'm suggesting, it's basically I will finish a sentence or actually correct something in line, Um, oops. So I can actually modify something. I can modify something in line. And now when I'm all done over here, notice how I have a checkbox here? And on this one I have a resolve. So a comment is for collaboration when I'm basically working with somebody and saying, I really want, I want you just to give me some different ideas or tell me which direction to go, but I don't want you to write my paper. So I can just make comments on it. I come back, fix whatever it is I need to fix. And then I can, as you know, if this was, say this is Brad's document, although it's owned by me, um, if Brad comes over and clicks on that, he should, I think, be able to resolve this as well. May not, because we both have just edit, or he just has edit rights, but can you resolve that, Brad? Yes, you can. So Brad can come over, looks at it, clicks resolve, it goes away. Later, I can come up on top, click comments, and I'll see these comments. So if it's your own comment, you created the comment, you can actually delete it so it goes away entirely. But if you just resolve it, it just comes up here on top. So they don't necessarily leave. If you want to look back later, you can do that. So, and notice when you clicked accept on the other one, it basically just added this piece that I typed in right in line and stays there. And you could have rejected it, then it would have went away. Like, I don't agree with what you just said, and you could have rejected it and did your own thing. So there's some pretty cool stuff you can do with this. So again, this can tie basically right into excuse me, right into CourseDen, just using kind of embed and sharing links. So as far as your students are concerned, they can access it from inside. They do have to be logged into their Wesca accounts. If they're not, they won't be able to access it because that's how we're, you know, depending again how you want to share it. If you really wanted to share it openly, you could, but then you have no idea who's doing what. So the other benefit of this, so you get this whole document, maybe it's a collaborative thing, you've given it to groups of students, however you want to do it. They create the paper, and then at the end of the day, you want to say, well, what happened and who did it? Who created the paper? Who did most of the work? You know, get an idea what the process was. If I click on File on top, I have See Revision History. Over on the side, we don't have a lot revision yet, but over on the side, it'll give me every revision made, and I can show as real detailed if I want to. Then I can walk down kind of through it if I'd like and see every little piece of information that's changed, including in color code based on who actually edited the file.
David, I really like this because one of the problems with the D2L discussion board is that I write, say, 3 paragraphs, but what you want to comment on is in the middle of the second paragraph.
Yep.
But your response is a response to the whole discussion. So this would allow somebody to add a comment in the middle of what I had to say and start a little comment stream right there on that specific point.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And then
Yep.
even from those comments, like you can, yeah, it looks like you resolved. Let's reopen this one. So now this comment's reopened. I can also come down and click on it, and I can respond to the comment. So it's not just me making another comment. I can actually keep that going. I can reply directly in line to the comment. So you can do some neat stuff with this. I really like the idea of
I do
utilizing
too.
this.
The only issue that I have is that with the Web MBA, only a portion of the students are from West Georgia, and the ones from the 5 other schools in the collaboration don't necessarily get Gmail.
Yeah.
Right now, I actually have a class that is all West Georgia, so they all have a West Georgia login, so I could do this.
Yeah.
It's just not always the case.
True. You you can take this and share it outside of the university if they have a Gmail at all. So if you opened up and said, "Does anybody not have a Gmail in the class?" If you have a Gmail, we're gonna have depending on answers, but that question, you might be able to do it anyway, and then just get their Gmail address and add them to that link because it wouldn't have to be. When I click share again, I'll give you some more rights over here, give back your rights. I could come down here and say I have a different user that's not Gmail, my outside here, and I can give that person rights as well. Edit, comment, or view. I won't send, but if I click OK, I do get this little message. Well, not that one. Hang on. This little message. You are sharing too. This person's not part of your organization. They don't live in your box. But you can still do it. You can still say yes, that's fine. I want to share outside of UWG. So that's still an option. So if they have a Gmail at all, it doesn't have to be a Westcott EDU address.
That's really cool. Well, hey, I've got to jump out, but I really
Okay,
appreciate it. I've enjoyed it, and
thank you.
I appreciate the ideas here. So I am going to have to jump out of it. So have a
No
good
problem.
afternoon.
All right, thanks a lot. Let me know if you can do
Thanks.
anything else for you.
Okay, thanks.
You bet. I hope that was helpful for you as well. But do you have any other thoughts or questions before I kind of move on? I know it's just the two of us now, so if you have any other thoughts or questions, or if you want me to kind of dive back into discussions, I'd be happy to kind of entertain thoughts. But you can do a lot of stuff as far as what this is concerned. You again, even inside of the discussion, you can just put that link in the discussion thread as well if you want to use Google Docs. If it's something that you like, go back to my. Where was I at? Here we go. If I go back into the course builder, well, sorry, not the course builder, back into discussions, I can go back to that same discussion. Even I was just going to point this out. Sorry, in the discussion, I actually embedded a video directly in my discussion, which you can do as well. And then students can just comment on the video. I'll come back to the one I was just working on. Click Edit Topic. And up in this, I can just embed that link. It's not really a method of embedding the entire document right inside of the discussion, but I can certainly embed it outside. So if I was working on one page, one paper, not necessarily a whole folder, if I come up to that, sorry, say on this page that I made for Brad, if I click on share here, I can just grab this URL, and again, depending on how I have the links, I can copy that, and that'll actually, I can make it so it should open internally inside of the system. So if I go back to Course Builder, back to week 9, and just add a link that way. So I'll come down here, URL, paste that in, and say insert. Maybe this is just the whole course document, and we're gonna use one document, and I'll edit it. Say save. So now, if I just click on just that document, it should open it right inside my class, if the stars align for us. So now inside the class, they can actually edit it. So it shows me here it's open twice because I actually have it open in this other window. Let me close it up there. But now I can come right in here, and it looks like it's part of CourseDen, but it's actually in Google Drive, but I'm editing it inside CourseDen, as long as I've given them rights. And again, depending on the rights you give them, you may have some people that only have comment rights, some can just see it. So it depends what you want to do with that. You're not really using, okay. So you had a question about the math piece, right? So about equation for the grade book. Do you want me to try to look at that? Again, that's not something I've used a ton, but we can certainly entertain the thought. I can go take a look at it. And with that thought, I know I don't have a mic. If this is not too hard to throw in the type bar, what? So where would you like? How do you want to use that? Are you talking about as part of the assignment, or just talking about just the grade? How to enter the grade book with an equation. I'm a little confused. Your final grade. Okay. So define your equation. Would it be easier if I actually called you via phone or had you call in? And I can talk about this as well. We can pop off of here and just talk on the phone if you'd like. And I can just continue to share a screen. I don't have a problem with that. Okay. So just hold that thought for a second. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just close our broadcast so we're not recording all of this because it's kind of a separate topic. So for right now, I'll go ahead and just close the broadcast, and then we'll move on. Anyway, so let me kill that. Thank you.